Eddie Murphy wasn't just a comedian, he was a revolution. In the 1980s, he rose from a Brooklyn teenager to Hollywood's highest-paid superstar, saving Saturday Night Live, breaking box office records, and redefining comedy forever. But behind the laughter was a storm waiting to explode. Within years, the king of comedy would face flops, scandals, and a fall so hard that Hollywood nearly erased him. This is the unbelievable rise of Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's story begins not on the glamorous red carpets of Hollywood, but in the bustling, unforgiving streets of Brooklyn, New York. Born in 1961, Eddie's childhood was far from easy. His father, a transit police officer, passed away when Eddie was just 8 years old, leaving his family fractured. His mother later became ill, and for a time, Eddie and his brother were placed in foster care. For many children, this would have been a tragedy that defined their lives. But for Eddie, it was something different. It became the crucible where his gift for comedy was forged. Instead of allowing sadness to consume him, young Eddie turned pain into humor. He discovered that laughter was not only a way to heal himself, but also a way to command attention, to control a room, and eventually to capture the world. By the time he was a teenager, Eddie had already become the neighborhood entertainer. He imitated celebrities, mocked television personalities, and told outrageous jokes to anyone who would listen. Inspired deeply by Richard Pryor, Eddie sharpened his act in local comedy clubs. Imagine being just 15 years old and walking on stage in front of strangers, trying to make them laugh. Most teenagers would have crumbled under the pressure, but not Eddie. He thrived in the spotlight, performing with such energy and confidence that even older comedians took notice. By his late teens, Eddie wasn't just another kid chasing a dream. He was a rising force in the New York comedy scene. Then, in 1980, came the opportunity that would change his life forever. Saturday Night Live, once a juggernaut of television comedy, was collapsing. Ratings were down, the show was in crisis, and NBC executives feared the magic was gone. Enter 19-year-old Eddie Murphy. At first, he was only a featured player, barely seen in sketches. But when Eddie finally got his chance, he exploded onto the screen. His characters were electric. Buckwheat, Gumby, Mr. Robinson, these weren't just funny sketches, they became cultural touchstones. Eddie didn't just play characters, he transformed into them. His timing, his voice, his physical comedy, it was all flawless. Overnight, Eddie became the breakout star, the man who single-handedly saved SNL from collapse. For millions of viewers across America, tuning in to Saturday Night Live became synonymous with watching Eddie Murphy perform. But Eddie wasn't content with television fame. Hollywood came calling. In 1982, he landed his first major film role in 48 Hours, opposite Nick Nolte. The movie was an instant hit, showcasing Eddie's razor-sharp wit and fearless energy. He wasn't intimidated by seasoned actors. In fact, he often stole scenes from them. Critics called him a revelation. Suddenly, Eddie Murphy wasn't just a comedian, he was a movie star, and the hits just kept coming. In 1983, he starred in Trading Places alongside Dan Aykroyd, another massive success that cemented his reputation. But it was 1984's Beverly Hills Cop that truly launched Eddie into superstardom. As Axel Foley, a fast-talking Detroit detective navigating the posh streets of Beverly Hills, Eddie delivered comedy, action, and charm all in one. The film shattered box office records, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated movie of its time. Practically overnight, Eddie became one of the most bankable actors in Hollywood. He was no longer just a comedian, he was a cultural icon. By the mid-1980s, Eddie Murphy was everywhere. He released stand-up specials like Delirious and Raw, which pushed boundaries and became instant classics. He sold out arenas, proving that stand-up comedy could be as big and powerful as a rock concert. He wasn't just telling jokes, he was commanding stadiums full of people, captivating audiences with his energy and outrageous, unfiltered style. At the height of this frenzy, Eddie decided to explore music. In 1985, he released the single Party All the Time, produced by Rick James. While critics mocked it, the song became a surprise hit, climbing the charts. Whether people loved it ironically or genuinely enjoyed it, the truth was undeniable. Eddie Murphy had the kind of influence where whatever he touched turned into a phenomenon. During this golden period, Eddie was unstoppable. He was charming, fearless, and undeniably talented. He had achieved what most entertainers only dream of: dominance in stand-up comedy, television, and film, all before turning 30. He was Hollywood's brightest star, and everyone believed his reign would last forever. But what no one realized at the time was that Eddie's meteoric rise came with a hidden cost. The higher he climbed, the more dangerous the fall would be. By the late 1980s, Eddie Murphy was at the very top of the entertainment industry. He had conquered stand-up comedy, revitalized television, and dominated the box office. He was rich, famous, and admired. But success has a way of changing people, and for Eddie, the cracks in his empire began to show. As his fame skyrocketed, Eddie began to demand more control over his projects. He wasn't just starring in movies anymore. He wanted to write, produce, and even direct. On paper, this seemed like a natural progression for someone as talented as Eddie, but in practice, it revealed a weakness. In 1989, Eddie directed and starred in Harlem Nights, a film he hoped would showcase his creative vision. Instead, it became a critical disaster. Reviewers called it self-indulgent, poorly written, and lacking the spark that made Eddie so unique. For the first time, the golden boy of Hollywood seemed untouchable no more. The 1990s were a mixed bag for Eddie Murphy. While he scored hits like The Nutty Professor and later voiced Donkey in Shrek, his career was increasingly marked by inconsistency. For every success, there were multiple flops. Films like A Vampire in Brooklyn failed to connect with audiences. And then came the disasters of the 2000s, The Adventures of Pluto, Nash, Meet Dave, and Imagine That. These weren't just box office disappointments, they were embarrassments. Critics savaged them, audiences stayed away, and Eddie's reputation as a superstar crumbled. The man who once guaranteed hits was now considered box office poison. But Eddie's struggles weren't just professional, they were personal. The media turned on him, eagerly reporting on scandals, controversies, and relationship troubles. Tabloid headlines painted him as arrogant and out of touch. The charm that once made him beloved now seemed like ego. For fans who had grown up idolizing Eddie, it was heartbreaking to see their hero become a target of ridicule. And yet, just when it seemed like Eddie's career was finished, he surprised everyone. In 2006, he delivered a stunning performance in Dreamgirls. Stripping away the comedy, Eddie played a deeply emotional, tragic character that reminded audiences of his true talent. The performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, and for a brief moment, Hollywood was ready to welcome him back. But once again, inconsistency held him back. Instead of building on that momentum, Eddie returned to weaker projects that did little to restore his former glory. Still, Eddie Murphy is nothing if not resilient. Even at his lowest points, he remained a household name, beloved by fans who remembered his brilliance. His voice as Donkey in Shrek became iconic, introducing him to a whole new generation of children who didn't know him as the edgy comedian of the 1980s, but as the lovable sidekick of a fairy tale franchise. Eddie's career is a story of extremes. He climbed higher and faster than almost anyone in Hollywood history, and when he fell hard. But through it all, his legacy as a pioneer of comedy and film has never truly disappeared. The rise and fall of Eddie Murphy isn't just about fame and failure. It's about the risks of ambition, the cost of success, and the unpredictable nature of stardom. Even today, whispers of a comeback surround him. With projects like Dolomite Is My Name, Eddie has shown glimpses of the genius that once made him unstoppable. The question remains, is Eddie Murphy's story a tragedy of wasted potential, or is it simply unfinished? Perhaps the greatest twist in his career is still waiting to unfold.